I've got to manage myself, I've got to manage my mind. The task is not easy, but to high heights I climb.
I'm determined to succeed, so no excuses, please. If you don't want success in life, then don't hinder me. Yes, let the whole world know. A CEO. You are a CEO. I'm a CEO. You are a CEO. I'm a CEO. The time is here to celebrate. You are a CEO. You are a CEO. You are a CEO. You are a CEO. Yes, let the whole world know. The time is here to celebrate. Success is calling, so don't be late. You are a CEO.
Hello, everyone. Michael E. Parker here in studio on CEO TV Live, and we have another exciting show for you. As promised, we're going to be talking about the very important topic, work will never be the same. Now, I want you to understand something here is that I have got a special guest for you to talk about this topic. We're going to go into many different elements of this, and this has been a really good friend of mine, growing up together, going to college together, watching her go into the workforce, being all across the corporate world as an international leader. And I was able to steal her away from all of that and bring her into MEP Enterprises and to URCO, and she is now the Chief Relationship Officer here at my company. It is with great honor to present to you Miss Jahleel Stewart. Jahleel, how you doing?
Thank you, sir.
You like that welcome I
That
gave
was a
you?
nice introduction. Thank
That's
you very
right.
much.
I'll give you an introduction because, you know, I'm happy every day that you came in to help us in all that we're pursuing as an enterprise. So just thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and
Yeah,
to be on
well,
the show with you all.
And we're going to be talking about something that I know, is near and dear to you. I mean,
Yes.
your background in the corporate world, your background in human resources. We're talking about work and how everything is changing.
Yeah.
We came through this pandemic. We've seen things we've never seen before in the history of the world.
Mm-hmm.
We've never seen it to this magnitude in this way.
Yeah.
The world has never been this large for something to happen like this. So before we even jump in, just what was your initial reaction when you started to realize that this was not just some quick thing that was going to come and go? What was your reaction, when you just noticed that?
I mean, really just pure shock because when it first started, I and some of my friends is just kind of like, maybe a couple of months, hunker down.
Right. Yeah.
We'll get through this, and then it was 5 or 6 months, and I remember us even kind of talking internally, when do we think we might be back, and it's a year later.
Right.
And so at some point, it did register that we're in this for a while, and all the way in this for a while.
Now, before we talk about the impact of when you started to feel that way, given your background, you can't help but start thinking about how work is impacted and how teams work together and leaders work together, because you've been dealing with things like that, for a long period of your career. But before we get into that, give a little background for those that may not know of just the different types of work environments that you've been in and the type of responsibilities that you've had, to give some context.
Good questions. A good point. So from a corporation perspective, I worked in a role where I partnered closely with a lot of corporate leaders. And in that case, it was leaders of corporate divisions or units. So either the partnered with the leader of finance for an enterprise or leaders of global business global businesses.
Yeah.
And then since some of that transition, since I've had the pleasure of being with Michael E. Parker Enterprises, And with doing consulting and even working in our business, consulting with small business owners as well as, medium-sized and large companies. So being able to see what's happening inside of companies, outside looking in.
Yeah.
And then also working within our own business teams. We have businesses in the retail industry, businesses in the real estate industry,
Yeah.
businesses,
Food.
service industry,
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
So really being able to see what's happening within our own world, looking into other customers' world, and also being able to think about the world as I've known it through the years. It's easy to see this forced change upon us
Right,
and
right.
the world in a way that I believe in some settings we talked about and planned for. And I'll just go back to experiences and, very, very many conversations through the years. I'll just take work from home as a topic.
Yeah.
Work from home is something that's been talked about for many, many years. I've known it since I've been in, working in industry actively. It's been at different times. I've heard the very conservative thoughts of that leader who wanted to see people at their desk, and it was a very serious focus and intentional. It
Right.
had to do with business results, and they would say not about trust,
Right.
but about seeing them in their seats, and then through the years, there being just different thoughts of those who were more just thinking out of the box of do I need to be sitting in my desk doing
Right.
X, Y, and Z?
Right.
I'm on a computer. I can be doing that from anywhere.
Right. Especially in the tech space.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
tech space and even some of the service industries. Like,
Yeah.
you think about it, we hire customer service support from other countries.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
so it's like, I've seen that progression in thinking, but this forced leaders, no matter conservative, progressive, whatever you would put it, I'm saying conservative from a standpoint of I've got to see you,
Yeah.
to very progressive of do the work from anywhere you live, wherever you want, and do the
We're
work,
just
right?
trying to keep this thing going. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
This forced a conversation of no matter whether you see me or not or how you see me,
Yeah.
the work has to continue.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out a way to keep this team connected, to keep communication happening, keep decisions made, keep revenue flowing where we can, right? It forced a change.
Yeah.
We talk about change management all the time and
Well,
planning for it.
Let me piggyback on that because
Yeah.
you're kind of talking about how it was forced on companies to have to deal with this
Yeah.
and all the different things that came up. And so let's go into that a little deeper, a little bit about what the companies are going through. So I know companies are made up of people, but ultimately there are some people making decisions on about these companies and what they're going to do or not do, and they're thinking about how to keep the companies, alive, how to make money, how to keep teams together. So tell me a little bit about when we say work will never be the same. What are some things that you feel companies are really grappling with the most right now because of the situation we're in now?
Yeah, it's very interesting. One of the things I do to stay connected with what's happening in industry is I attend conferences. And one thing I've enjoyed in this period is many of the associations I'm a part of are offering free conferences or settings to just talk with other business leaders about what's happening. So in hearing that conversation and being a part of that conversation with larger companies, connectivity is a big part of this conversation. How do I onboard a new employee into this culture? How do we maintain the culture we have or make changes to the culture where we need to? So things, around recruiting, onboarding, acquiring talent, retaining talent. People have more choices now. So someone may choose to relocate to a city that they want to live in, and if they can't do their job here, they might find a company that they can work for and do that job.
Right.
So large companies are having to think about that. Some of the medium-sized companies that I've had exposure to have had to really think about, I'm using the word reimagine a lot these days, but they've really had to reimagine. Like we have one client who has had to have everyone, come back in person. How do we do that safely? So the way that the work is happening on site where it has to happen is very, very different. People are Zooming in to meetings sitting next door.
Right.
So it had to be reimagined
Right.
so people can be safe.
Yeah.
And then we know small business owners where some of them have had to decide, I cannot continue my business the way that it was, but I want to stay in business. So how do I reimagine and do it a completely different way?
Yeah.
Maybe their business was completely based on in-person transaction, and now it's online transaction
Yeah.
only, and how do I make that successful? So the transition, this has forced a transition in thinking about how the work can be done, what needs to be done, how it can be done,
Yeah.
and then making sure it can be sustained in this environment, because now at least the companies and customers I have exposure to, there is an understanding it will not be the same.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not going back to what it was.
Now let me throw a little curveball at you
Yeah.
because to set you up for this next question.
Yeah.
Tell me about how many different places have you been out of the country in your career? Because I know at times I would see you flying here, flying there, in different unique cultures and environments. What's some of the places you've been? Interesting places you've been in your travels.
I will
in
say
corporate.
one of the most surprising locations or destinations for me was Dubai.
Okay.
I just did not expect what I saw when the plane hit the ground.
Right.
And when I got to the airport and the infrastructure I saw, I was amazed, absolutely amazed with what I saw there. Asia was interesting, going to China. I was in Korea for a little bit. Europe is probably one of the most beautiful locations. I'd say Belgium was the
Yeah.
most beautiful city that I've seen, and then of course the city part. So it's been interesting to see the world and to see the perceptions of America
Right.
from other country leaders.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting.
So then this is my curveball. So
Yeah.
I asked you that for a reason to say, so because you've been exposed to that and seen that, and we know now the world is flat and the world has been made a neighborhood, everything is so connected.
Yeah.
How do you feel, what do you think some of the things companies are dealing with on the international front? What is that dynamic like? Companies that now are working and have branches in those areas, or the different cultural differences. Is there anything that you think is that you can just imagine that right now is probably a little bit different, or based on some of those places that you've been?
This is a guess to some degree, because I haven't been in all of the conversations recently in different industries I was in touch with, but I will say this. There are some things I imagine that are happening more efficiently, faster, and in a more connected way now than they were then. And that has to do with those that are in the high-tech space. Even though there's been the change and the reimagining, from a global perspective, a lot of that connectivity was there with regards to work happening 24 hours a day, connection happening from a service perspective, from a manufacturing perspective, from a sales perspective. The clock wasn't stopping.
Right.
So the 24-hour operation, I have to believe, has remained intact. And the connectivity, I'm going to that. My feeling would be that some of that is probably more efficient because of the dependency in technology.
Yeah.
When you look at the job postings now and the kind of the shift, we've seen, and studies have shown, the largest shift in skills required and job requirements is in the technology space. Now, when you get to service industry and more of the jobs that require take manufacturing.
Right.
That, I believe, from a global perspective, has been impacted in a very different way, because some had to shut down operations.
Right.
And that was global. So you may have, and I will also say, in the midst of this pandemic, there's been weather impacts to businesses that have been extremely significant, and they've been, global impact. We've seen tsunamis in Asia, we've seen fires in the United States, we've seen hurricanes. So you take that in addition to, and I'm saying that to say, some of those weather implications have shut down operations in the midst of pandemic and working safely. So it's a roundabout way of getting to, I think some things have probably improved and was forced to change and cause improvement. Some things I think had to come to a halt, be give time for operations to recover themselves.
Yeah.
And some never recover.
Yeah, now, very well said, very interesting. And so, speaking of how the world has got so interconnected and has been impacted in different ways, let's jump now, and you touched on this, but let's jump now to the candidates out there,
Yeah.
like who are looking for, job opportunities. And I know, like right now, specifically in California, we're just having a real estate craziness. I
Yes.
mean, literally, you put your house on the market, you might get 100,000 more than what you're asking. People are bidding. People are paying even if the appraisal doesn't come in for the amount. I'll pay it anyway. It's crazy. And now with candidates, it's almost a similar type of boom going on. Tell me how you would describe, for those who don't know, what is going on with candidates and recruitment right now?
Yeah, no, I love that analogy of the real estate market. And you know, the terminology that's used sometimes, it's a buyer's market or it's a
Right.
seller's market. I will use the disclaimer and say that this perspective is different across different industries.
Yeah,
So I'm going to
right.
give some generalities, but I do want to go on record
Yeah.
as saying it doesn't apply to every industry.
True, true.
But for many industries, I would say it's a candidate's market. Things have changed to where it's a candidate's market. There's just more choice. The fact that we were forced into a world that required virtual work requirements, it has changed the skill mix to some degree. So, I was on a conference recently and they were talking about the importance of the comfort level with technology coming across clear for any candidate, any leader at any level. I'll go and say some of those conservative leaders I made reference to before, there may have been an easy excuse for saying, I'm not sure where to find XYZ, a very slow adaptation to
Right.
the new technology. For the candidates who have adapted this new technology, and we have some generations where that's been easy.
Right.
But this has leveled the playing field. No matter the generation, no matter the place in the career, the legacy that
Yeah.
I like to call those
Yeah.
who've made their mark or those entering, the comfort level with technology, it's a given. It's a threshold. And the company knows quickly those candidates who have that comfort level and don't. We're doing
Right.
Zoom interviews.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
that was imagined, but
Yeah.
it was talked about, but we weren't doing it. Now we're forced to do it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the candidates who have that comfort level was sharing their screen, pulling up a different technology, being present in the meeting, all those different things.
Yeah.
It's leveling the playing field, and the candidates who have it down have more options. They can be deciding to live where they want to live.
Yeah.
Find the employer that has the culture fit, the job structure fit. As we know, we have parents working at home. They're at home with their children in school. Many, even though children have more of a hybrid situation in some cases now, it's still a factor.
Right.
And when they come home from school, there's homework, and the parent can choose to be home and present.
Yeah.
And so some have that choice and some don't. I
Yeah.
know some employers, and I have some clients where it is a requirement to be at the job. But there's others who can choose, do I want to come in?
Yeah.
Or do I want to work from a job at home? So that's changed and tilted the candidate's experience in the market.
And it's really, now there was sometimes every now and you heard about someone doing an interview from home or a phone call. You did phone interviews, things like that, but never to the extent to where it's so much embraced now to where literally where you live is not as relevant as do you have the match to
Yes.
what's being asked for.
That's right.
And that is just a interesting dynamic. And that kind of brings me to another area as we think about candidates. We talked about companies. Let's talk a little bit about leadership. So, and I know you've worked with a lot of leaders, executive leaders. You've done executive coaching. You've hired leaders. When you think about leadership, what are some things that we really need to be thinking about in leadership in this dynamic now? Because, a lot of leaders want to grow. They want to develop. They want to make sure that they're continuing to make the right decisions that will help them to keep elevating in their career. But this is a whole new world. So what are some things that you think need to be considered with respect to leadership at this time?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because we've all said, like in the industry, that the eyes into the company for any employee or candidate is through the experience with a leader. That's the same. That doesn't change whether we're in person or virtual. The experience the environment and the experience that the leader creates for the employee and the team defines how the person feels about where they are and what they're doing. I'll link back to what we were just talking about on the candidates and the interviews. If a leader approaches an interview from a perspective of understanding this candidate can shop and this candidate can choose what they want, there's a very different approach a leader can take in an interview where you can transition from interviewing where I have a list of 20 candidates. I'm going to choose from the 20 I want, and basically it's all my choice and my filter,
Right.
to where these 20 candidates are shopping and they're choosing you.
Right.
Who wants to work for you based
Right.
on your experience? I mean, they have access to LinkedIn. So I work with a lot of people who are interviewing and they're exploring opportunities. And I love telling them that when they get calls from multiple recruiters, you are in the seat to drive this conversation and to, in a very tactful way, make it known you have choices.
Right,
You
right.
have options, right?
Right, in a
So,
tactful way,
In
yeah,
a tactful
yeah.
way, but it's a way to do it and
Yeah.
to really drive that conversation to where
Give an example
you're
of that.
choosing them.
Give an example of that.
So let's just say you're in an interview and you're talking to a leader about, you're talking about their decision to return to work. So has the company decided to return to work? Are we having to come into the office? Are we working remote? A leader can take an approach and say, we've all decided to come back on June 1st, and we have changed and made things safer for people to be here, but June 1st is the time that we're coming back. That candidate has an opportunity to ask and to explore, have you all had any thoughts about parts of the job being done virtual or at home? I'm in a situation where my child is at working
Right.
at home, and
Right.
in my current position, I'm able to work remote.
Right.
So is that something you all have talked about? Coming into a new job, I know I'd have to come in and get to know everyone. But what are your thoughts about
Right.
work being done virtually or
Right.
remote? The way the leader answers says everything to the candidate about just even the openness in their mindset. So it takes me to the leader. So the candidate can ask the questions in the right way.
Right.
The leader's answer sets the tone for that person deciding whether or not you're open to considering a different way work is done.
Right.
So the leaders have to be more creative in their thinking about the way work is done, about the way to connect the team,
Yeah.
about the way to communicate and build relationships and maintain them
Yeah, yeah.
with their teams.
Yeah,
It's very
and
interesting.
It really is, and I think too that leadership has a lot to do with your ability to manage how people feel and how to create environments for people to grow.
Yeah.
And so I think just thinking differently now about how do you create an environment virtually or with less one-on-one contact or less being in the personal space of someone else, how do you begin to allow that environment to permeate through Zoom,
Yeah.
through phone calls, through text messages, to really role model the type of behavior you want to see
Yeah.
in a team, but then also stay attractive enough where a person wants to continue working there.
Yeah. And back to what you're saying on communication, I really think for leaders, I think in one show we talked a lot about authenticity. And for a leader who can be purposeful and communicate why it's important at a point in time that we come together when it's safe.
Yeah.
That connects with, you're not just doing it because
Yeah.
it's inconvenient, but when a leader is purposeful, they're authentic, they've thought through why we need to do X, Y, Z. There may still be employees who decide, I can't do that because it
Yeah.
just doesn't fit my
Yeah.
scenario.
Right.
But it's not because they don't understand where the leader is. And that's the choice a leader can make in the way they present themselves, the way they communicate, the way they connect.
Right.
Is that conscientious thought about, let me explain why why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think because people are so educated and have so many options today, and information available to them, you have to focus on the purpose and the why. Like you said, the more that you help someone understand why and build a case for the necessity, then people are more agreeable to it. So when you think about, I want to go into this last area, as I know there's so much we could talk about. And I want to talk about this last area that is so critical, and I really want to get some of your insight, especially with your human resource background. I mean, since we were really young, you always had a love for human resources and seeing people develop. And I want to talk about skills. Just, when you think about an individual today, a professional, you always want to have as many skills as possible to make yourself more, marketable. And so today, in this new world that we've been talking about on this show, what are some skills that you think are becoming just extremely important in the dynamic that we see today? What some things come to your mind?
Yeah, there's quite a few that come to mind. I'm going to combine creativity and problem solving in this first response. There's such a great environment for employees to be a part of the conversation and how we come up with the solution to the problem. So we've talked a lot about the problems or the questions we're having to solve. How are we going to get this done? How are we going to get this product out? How are we going to have this meeting? There's just as we mentioned the candidates market, there's never been such a great an opportunity as we have now for employees and leaders to be a part of the solution.
Right.
So good creative solutions will be welcome by any level of the organization when the person knows the problem we're trying to solve.
Right.
The person who can come up with a creative thought, a creative solution to get something done will get the gold star.
Yeah.
Right? So just being solution oriented, I think is extremely important, again, more than ever before, because the problems and the questions are great.
Yeah.
Intellectual curiosity.
That's good.
It's never been such a time as this to explore the questions why. Why can't we? I love you wrote the book.
Yeah.
Who said so?
Yeah.
It challenges and makes you just think, why can't we do X, Y, and Z such a way? Why can't we think about or create a different opportunity? Can we try something different? I mean, it comes to meetings. It comes to, again, product development. It comes to revenue and sales and customer interactions. So thinking about outside of the box, how do we keep our customer, intact and nurtured and close to what we're doing? That person who's willing to think outside of that box, I think, is great. Flexibility, I think, is important. Companies are having to be lean. They're having to think about ways to get more done with less. So the ability to have the skills, gain the skills that you can see might be needed. If someone has access, like I mentioned, a lot of free conferences, a lot of people are doing certifications, gaining skills. Let's put them to work. So if you can see within a company or you're looking at companies where different skill sets are needed, that ability to be the project manager and the leader and the team member. I love how you talk about leaders have to follow.
Yeah.
Those who are following sometimes have to lead. So being able to be flexible, to adapt, to be agile is highly beneficial in this work environment.
Yeah.
So solution orientation, creativity, being agile and flexible, those are things that will keep you at a company.
Now, let me just say this before we wrap up, is those skills are monumental that you brought up. And I think when people bring those things to the table, being able to actually add value at a time we need it most, because the problems are great, the questions are great. I thought that was really good what you mentioned about that, because it's so true. It's like we don't need someone to add to the problems. Like we've got so many things to solve. But last but not least is people have been stressed out, and there's been depression, suicide, mental illness, and I think also kind of a silent, I don't even know if we can call it a skill, but the ability to be positive and to bring good energy right now.
Yes.
I could imagine that's going to become more important too. Is, you know, there's so much weight, social unrest, you know, the health issues. What do you feel about that dynamic of just people bringing positive energy to the workplace?
Yeah, it's what you mentioned about, again, that challenge in this environment we're in. It's never been more real than what we're experiencing now, and it's extremely real. So much so that if a leader isn't taking time, we always needed to do it, but to really be taking time to talk to people and see how they're doing, how are you, is a very, very important question. And then having an openness in mind to, we talked earlier about creativity, flexibility. Again, at a time such as this, there's never been a case-by-case environment like it is now. There's no cookie-cutter solution.
Yeah, so true.
So to be able to manage case-by-case within and a focus of keeping the team together is critically important. And back to the explanations. I mean, the sad truth is we have employees and companies who've lost family members.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm in HR. We write the policies on leave of absence and benefits available.
Yeah.
And if there's ever been a time for us to be a part of working with leaders to find creative solutions for this employee to have the flexibility that they need, the support that they need,
Yeah.
back to creativity. I mean, we are having to go off the page, outside of the booklet.
Yeah.
Think outside of the box. Where is the box?
Yeah, the
we're
textbook is
making
gone.
boxes.
Yeah.
But if it's done with an intention of the employee, the contractor, the customer, knowing I see you, I understand. And if we don't understand, I'm listening.
Yeah, that's
Right?
good.
And it's like
Good.
that, to your point you're making, I just believe companies, leaders who are able to really make those connections will be able to sustain and retain employees, customers, you know, keep them with you. We're on a journey.
Yeah.
This is not just a one step. I mean, this is going to be over a period of time. So I appreciate you mentioning that reality and the pressure that we all have and the challenge we all have to roll up our sleeves and stop. We're moving at 1,000, a million miles a minute.
Yeah.
But these conversations require us to stop and connect. And it's so interesting when it's an employee either in person or via Zoom, it's more challenging on the leader. But that conversation is just as important.
Yeah.
Whether we're in the same room,
That's right.
whether on the phone with the customer. Can you imagine? Customers calling in and they're trying to manage this transition that's happened in their life. To, you know, to have a customer service rep on the phone who knows, yeah, I'm being timed and my call is supposed to be 30 seconds, but this one needs to be a minute.
Yeah.
And to be able to explain, right? And so
Yeah.
it's a very important time to have good judgment.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. That's a great note to end this on. I think that, you know, we have to remember what people are going through and bring that into the discussion where there's a little concern there about how I'm making you feel and also how I'm feeling and being able to make that right connection. And I just want to thank you so much for everything you shared on this show. I mean, this has been very valuable, and I know people can really get a lot out of this as they think about work, as they think about how things are changing. People are thinking about changing positions. People have already changed positions.
Yeah.
Some people are looking for new positions. So There's so much that we've covered, but I just want to thank you for what you added. It made this show very special and rich. And so maybe, you know, you haven't been here in a while on the show, but we need to do this again. And I know you'll commit to
Absolutely,
that.
I'd be happy to.
No, thank you. So I want to just thank everybody for attending this show. And again, I want to thank Miss Jahleel Stewart for everything she gave us in this wonderful discussion. You can see that work will definitely never be the same, but by the same token, that's not all bad, because we can make positive changes, we can make positive moves, and we can start preparing our life to be able to be more successful in this new age, this new time. And so I want to invite you to use the principles of You Are a CEO, being a CEO of your mindset, being a CEO of your self-worth, adding more skills to yourself, being conscious of the environment you're working in, whether you are a leader or working with other leaders, or even just being the leader of your own situation. We all have a responsibility right now to really take the things that we heard and the dynamics we discussed and not let them be a barrier to anything we want to do, so that we can keep moving forward in our professional career or as entrepreneurs that are creating new environments for others. And so the big businesses out there, the small businesses out here, this is all for all of us. We all can do something to make this better. So make sure that you do that, and make sure you don't let anything stop you. Now, having said that, I got to tell you about our next show. I know you enjoyed this, but listen, this is going to be very, very different. And I want to tell you about our next show. And let me see, I have my, I don't know if I have my little clicker here to tell you about the next show. But I want to tell you this, our next show is going to be unlike anything that you have heard, and there's going to be some surprises, and there's going to be some things you didn't expect. And I want you to know that this next show is going to be specifically a special announcement from me about some very important things to do with URCO and what's going to be happening this summer as we move toward many, many exciting moments ahead. So do not miss this next show. Find out about the special announcement, find out about what's happening next, and make sure that you come geared up, because we're going to be doing some wonderful things this summer, moving into the rest of the year. We've made it. Can you believe how long we've been in this situation? And now you ourselves been kind of keeping us through. It's been feeding us a little bread and water. We've been staying alive and pushing and striving for everything we're doing in our personal and our professional lives. And I got more to tell you about what's going to be happening on the remainder of this year. So thank you so much. From now until then, get out there and let the whole world know that you are a CEO.
Yes, let the whole world know you are a CEO. You are a CEO.